He made a fair move. Screaming about it can't help you.
Let him have it. It's not wise to upset a Wookiee.
But, sir, nobody worries about upsetting a droid.
That's because a droid don't pull people's arms out of their sockets when they lose. Wookiees are known to do that.
I got to do another intro.
All right.
I've been talking about all the things like the where my love of Star Wars went kind of behind the scenes, and I decided, you know what, we need to bring this one in front of the scenes, do it for the viewers, and put it up on YouTube. So here to talk to me about that is my good friend. He's a comic book writer. He's an editor. He fulfills, his comic book ordering for shops, and he's a writer. Aaron Sparrow, you're also a Star Wars fan, correct?
I am. I've been a Star Wars fan since I was a very small child.
We're about the same age, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so apparently the first movie that I was ever supposed to go see was The Empire Strikes Back with my uncle. And unfortunately, it was sold out, so I ended up going and seeing, was it a Kroll?
That's equitable.
Well, at 4 years old, I was not happy about the situation. I might have told my uncle I was being gypped, and I might have walked away from the situation as he was trying to track down a very young man and bring him back into the fold. In hindsight, I love that movie. It's one of those movies I can watch every year. So,
I just love the idea that as a small child, you were already like throwing your popcorn and being like, "This is bullshit," and just walking out.
I was a middle child already. I had a younger brother, so the cynical smart aleck Wes was already coming to the surface at the time.
You already knew that reality is largely disappointing, and you were like, "I'm not having this."
So Star Wars essentially has been like a part of my life for as long as I can remember. I remember in my local, I'm from a small town, we would go to rent movies. You couldn't get Star Wars because they weren't new. It was like in a grocery store. But if we got to go to like St. Joe or Kansas City, the bigger cities around us, you can go to an actual like Hollywood Video or Blockbuster. There would be Star Wars. My brothers would be like, "Why are we renting Star Wars? Why are you renting The Empire Strikes Back again? You see these movies. This is the best movie here. Why would I go watch that crap when I could finally watch Star Wars again?"
When I go to a buffet, why am I going to get the worst thing on the menu? I'm going to get the best thing on the menu. I'm going to focus on that.
It would annoy the crap out of my brothers, but I've always had a love for Star Wars. It's the first thing I ever really loved, besides my family and my dog.
Yeah, my experience was like I remember being at a laundromat with my mom, and doing that kid thing where you're just bored out of your mind, and so you just lay on the dirty ground and just like moan about how unhappy you are. And I was looking under one of the dryers, and there was a little action figure underneath. And I was like, "What's that?" And I went and I grabbed it, and it was a Jawa. And I didn't know what it was at the time. I was like, "What in the world is this?" And I was just fascinated by it. And I got home, and my uncle was like, "Oh, that's from Star Wars." And I was like, "What's that?" And so I think that the re-release was coming up. So he was like, "I'll take you to see it." So he took me to see it, and he said, and it was my first movie. The first time I'd ever been in a walk-in theater. I'd been to the drive-in, but first time I'd ever been to a walk-in theater. And my uncle said, like, I was sitting there and I was kind of like making noise and like playing around in my chair. And he goes, and then the crawl started, and he read me the crawl. And he said, from the moment that first ship came out, and then when the Star Destroyer started coming and just kept going, he said, you were sitting there with your mouth open and you didn't say a word or move the rest of the movie. You were just transfixed. And so that was my first Star Wars experience.
And you mentioned the toys. That was almost the best part. Is like, even though you left the movie and you loved it, when you got to go home, the movie is there to play with. And I had the Darth Vader helmet collector that you could put all your figures in, right?
Yeah, the carrying case. Yeah, I had that. I had the C-3PO one. I had, fortunately, although my mom was a mess, my grandmother was super great about making sure that I had stuff, and so she would buy me the Star Wars toys, and so I had like an expansive collection. I have many memorable Christmases of opening, like The Empire Strikes Back, Vader's Chamber, Star Destroyer playset, which is just like this little sort of boxy playset where you put your Imperial troops, and then have the little hyperbaric chamber that Vader's in. Just all those great toys that we had. So you could just relive the adventure over and over. And all the Cantina guys were always on the Millennium Falcon, because I was always working away to have them, all these scoundrels in the adventure. It was good stuff.
So at the time, I was also really into wrestling. When we would go visit our grandparents on the weekends, like Saturday, you watch your Hanna-Barbera 2-hour thing, and then there was wrestling. It was like NWA, Glow, WWF. So one day I took my Darth Vader action figure collector. I went to the top bunk like I was coming off the top rope, a la Randy Savage. I came off the top rope and I hit my brother over the head with it. And I incapacitated him for a few moments. I realized that was my older brother, and I had a butt kicking coming. So I went and hid for 45 minutes. He did find me. And he rolled me pretty good. So we had lots of fun with the Star Wars action figures. And the Kenner toys are amazing. We can't even have a conversation about how crappy the current Star Wars toys are in comparison to those Kenner toys that, just the only articulation was the arms, I guess the shoulder and the hip.
Yeah, and then like their head would turn, unless it was like Chewbacca or somebody who had like obviously his headpiece was just one big. It went into his torso and that was it. But yeah, they were fantastic at the time. It was the best toys on the market at the time. And you had all those all the ships and all the expansive things that you could, the play sets, just so many play sets. It was a golden age for action figures. The 80s was such a good time for toys.
And I remember when they announced the prequels, I was super excited, and I got more and more disappointed. Although the last prequel movie was actually pretty good. And then when I heard about Disney acquiring LucasFilm, I was working nights. I think I was in Korea when the announcement came. I was talking to these guys. I was working. Man, this is going to be amazing. You've seen what Disney has done with Marvel Studios. Can you imagine them breathing that kind of life in these characters? This is going to be better than the prequels. This is everything I could have ever wanted. We finally get The Force Awakens. And I'll be honest, after the first movie, I knew that I was seeing a regurgitation of A New Hope. I knew that there were some issues with Rey, but I was fully confident that they had a plan in place that this was going to be a good, competent story. So even with my friend James, who was a world-class a-hole, but I truly respect, he was like, you don't think Rey is a Mary Sue? I said, yes, she is in this movie. But what you don't realize is that she's had Jedi training. She just doesn't remember. And we're going to find out that she was like the sole remaining student from Luke's academy, which we had heard about. I was like, this stuff has all been played out, man. It's like, we're going to get all these exciting revelations. And it turns out the joke was on me, Aaron Sparrow, because I went and watched The Last Jedi.
Yeah, if you're a Twitter weirdo and you want to dig back through, I don't know what now, years and years of my Twitter history, you'll find me defending Rey from The Force Awakens on Twitter, saying that like this is just the first act. You've got to get to the second act is when the character, we're going to learn about them. They're going to find out some things about their past. They're going to have an element of tragedy, in their story. They're going to make a mistake that's going to cost them something. It's like this is kind of like the 3-act structure. This is the way that it goes. So yeah, they're creating JJ's famous for mystery boxes. So what he's doing is he's creating a mystery in the first film, and then hopefully he's going to pay it off throughout. But what I couldn't have predicted was Rian Johnson coming in and just going, I'm going to subvert expectations.
So the worst thing is, Aaron, my buddy Alberto, I'm about to retire in the military. I'm a master sergeant. I'm in Texas at the time, and I had returned to the Philippines where my wife and son were. He's almost like he's around 2. We go to see the Force Awakens. I'm sorry, the
Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi. It was such a train wreck. But I couldn't help but remember my conversations with my friend Alberto, and he had been going at the time the Force Awakens was coming out. He was going through a very difficult divorce. And he was extremely excited to see this movie. And the most exciting part was he was finally going to see like Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, the heroes that he grew up loving as a kid. He was going to get to see it with his son and his daughter. Mm-hmm. And it was really important to him. And I went over and I was like, hey, Alberto, what did you think of The Force Awakens? Man, I loved it. It's like I cried. It's like, you cried? It's like, what, when Han died? Like you cried when Han died? It's like, nah, man, I could see that when company goes. But when I finally saw Luke on the big screen again, it's been 20 years. He hadn't seen anything like this since he was a kid. It just brought back all these emotions, his attachment to the character, and then the fact that he was getting to experience it with his children. Like it was just a phenomenally emotional event for him. And he actually cried. man, I'm glad that you got to have this. I didn't realize you liked Luke Skywalker that much. You know, I thought I liked Luke. You must really love him. And so we were watching the Last Jedi, and we're getting into like the first like 10, 15 minutes. Man, I feel bad for Alberto. They just tossed Luke Skywalker right out the.
I felt bad for everybody who was watching. So I went to see. One of my best friends, this guy named Alan, and we kind of became friends through a mutual friend who sells Star Wars toys. You know, and Alan's a big Star Wars fan. I'm a big Star Wars fan, and so it was in between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones that we became friends. So every Star Wars movie that had come out since then, we had seen together on opening night. You know, we'd make sure to get tickets, and we would go and we'd watch together, so that we could go to Denny's or whatever place was open that late. You know, one of those restaurants whose whole slogan should just be "We're still open," you know, because that's all they have to offer. So we'd go there to like an IHOP or a Norm's and sit and like dissect the movie and talk about what we liked and what we didn't like, and just generally be excited about Star Wars. Even the prequels, Attack of the Clones. At that point we were kind of like, well, Phantom Menace wasn't as good as it could have been, and then Attack of the Clones came out and it was like, there's a lot of things that I liked, but the love story was shit. And then we liked Revenge of the Sith more, even though there was still some problems with it, but there was still a story there that we could like kind of dig into and speculate on and have a good time with. And so we had done the same thing with Force Awakens, and we realized it was a rehash, that we were kind of getting the same thing. But at the same time, we were like, look, Disney just spent $4 billion on this. They're the first movie. They're going to play it safe. They're going to, they kind of got to like move away from the prequels and the internet hate that's got. So I understand they want to do something just like right across the plate, bring in new fans, and remind the old fans of what they loved. I get it. And there's a lot
Rogue
of
One
things.
Still pretty okay.
Yeah, and visually great, and there were some choices that I would have done differently. I didn't think that reviving the Empire as the First Order was interesting, or I tend to agree with George Lucas that you should do something different. I would have liked to have seen like a revived Mandalorian Empire, maybe serving the Sith. I think that would have been interesting. But I understood Disney's like, we paid for all this IP. People want to see stormtroopers. People want to see TIE fighters. That's what we're going to give them. So we went to see The Last Jedi, and I didn't have any expectations. The only thing I knew about it, because I watched the trailer and that was it. And then the only thing I heard was how, critics are saying this is the best movie since Empire Strikes Back. And I was like, okay, well, this has got to be pretty interesting then, and I got in there and the crawl went by and I was like, oh, they're starting it immediately after The Force Awakens. That's odd, but okay. And then we got to the Yo Mama jokes with Poe and Hux looking like an idiot after being scary space Hitler in the first movie. I was like, they just totally undercut the villain for a lame joke. Or, are they trying to be Guardians of the Galaxy? It works in Guardians because of who the characters are. This does not work for Star Wars. What is happening? And that whole opening sequence, I was getting more and more irritated. I wasn't in the military, but I've read enough military fiction and I've watched enough movies and I've done enough research for writing that I know a certain amount about military tactics. Hell, I dug into it when I was a kid because I loved G.I. Joe so much. I was like, so I started reading books about, military skirmishes and things like that, mostly because I'm a big nerd, so that when I played G.I. Joe, I could do it more realistically. So, I'm watching the movie and it's like, they're like, target the ship, or, the ships are all escaping. All the rebels or the resistance or whatever the hell the new name is, they're all escaping, and the Imperial guys are like, target the base. And I'm like, is there not a military consultant on this? You stop the people from escaping. You take the base intact, because in their haste to leave, they probably left intel on other rebel cells and things like that you're going to want if you're the opposing military force. And I'm like, God, this is bad. And I kept waiting for it to get better, and it just never did. And after we got out of the theater, Alan said, within the first 5 minutes, he goes, I could feel the anger starting to radiate off of you. And he goes, and as the movie went on, he goes, your posture became more like balled up. And, you had like your fist against your face and you're kind of like leaning forward. And he goes, just like, you were so like tense. And I was like, yeah, because I was like, every single decision in this movie is the wrong one.
I had a similar experience. I had traveled back to the Philippines. My wife and my 2-year-old, who he's not going to watch the movie. He can't watch a movie at that time, but he's just going to goof off while we watch this movie. As we're going in, we notice there's a kid's playground in the mall. as we're going to the theater. And I'm like, hey, honey, if you guys need to come out, there's the kids' playground. You know, he might not be able to make it through the movie. He probably won't. Like, okay, duly noted. We get to the movie, and we get the stupid jokes. We get Finn, popping out, and he's got tubes and water squirting all over. And I'm going, oh, great. He's a sidekick joke character now. And we get the Luke moment where he grabs the lightsaber, throws it over his shoulder. And I'm trying to, I feel like it's under my breath, but apparently it's not under my breath. I'm saying some not nice things. My wife's like, you seem, I don't think you're enjoying this very much. It's like, oh, it's just a bad opening. It's going to get better. She's like, I think we're just going to leave. We're just going to go to that playground and we're going to go play. You seem a little upset. It's like, what are you, this is going to be a good movie. It's going to get better. She's like, nah, we'll be fine. You come find us when we're done. It's like, all right, suit yourself. Give me my Coke. When the movie's over, I walk out and I go to this kid's playground, where my wife and 2-year-old are sitting there, and she looks at me and she goes, didn't get better, did it? I was like, no, it got worse.
Demonstrably worse.
I couldn't believe it. Like, there's one moment where I think things are getting better. It's at the end, and a character's about to save everybody. I was like, and they ruined it. I was like, I don't know what I just watched. She couldn't believe it because she knows how important Star Wars is to me. And it just, like your friend could see it in you, my wife could see it. It was just so bad from the get-go. And I couldn't believe it just got progressively worse and worse and worse as the movie kept going along.
Yeah, that same moment with me, like Finn's about to sacrifice himself, and I'm like, oh, finally they're redeeming this character that they've just completely shit on this whole film. He's finally gonna have his heroic moment. I guess Finn's going out, but this is gonna be great. He's gonna save everybody. And then here comes Rose and like slams into him, and the whole thing. It's like they should both be dead from that impact. Those vehicles look like ramshackle at best. There's no shielding. It's like it's open air. It looks like they should both be dead. So she basically could have killed him, trying to save him, to keep him from sacrificing himself. She doesn't know that anything is going to happen to stop the big death laser from killing all their friends. And that stupid line about this, this is how we win, by saving what we love. It was like the big laser's about to kill everybody. You didn't save jack shit. What Finn was so doing bad. Was going to. And
then she essentially sexually assaults him on the battlefield to take his honor away even more.
Yeah, Ryan George has that pitch meeting where he's the writer. And he says, and then Rose slams into his vehicle and, stops him from saving everybody. And the producer goes, what? Why does she do that? And he goes, because she wants a little kiss. It's just like, so okay.
There's so many weird moments in that movie, especially with those two, when they were on that casino planet and they discover the kids are like enslaved and they're holding these animals for racing and gambling on. And then they free the animals, but they leave the children there as slaves. Like,
it was all worth it. It was all worth it. That made it all worth it. That one animal that got away, that is going to be rounded up in like 20 minutes and brought back. It was all worth it.
I imagine in Rian Johnson's head, well, at the end, he moves a broom with his mind. It's like, well, yeah, but you're also, messing up everything that's been established as far as using the Force, relationship with the Force, and whatnot. But, I guess, the kid needs to stay a slave so you could free some animals. It was exhausting. It's exhausting thinking about everything that was wrong with that movie. And it just destroyed like a nuclear bomb on my love or enthusiasm for Star Wars moving forward. I didn't watch Solo. I didn't watch The Rise of Skywalker. It was hard for me to even try out The Mandalorian.
Yeah, I walked out of Last Jedi and I said to myself, that is the last Disney Star Wars movie that I will pay to see. And it has been. I didn't go see Solo in the theater. Had no interest in it. I have since watched it like when it came to Netflix, and it was like, it was okay. It was unnecessary, but it was okay. There's a lot of dumb things in it that didn't need to be. Like, oh, why is how did Chewie get his nickname? Han shortened it. It's like they have a whole scene where it's like, Chewbacca, I'm not going to call you that every time. I'm like, when I watched Lord of the Rings and we're introduced to Samwise, and then people start calling him Sam, I didn't go, what is this? Well, where does this come from? Who's this Sam guy? I get it. I get it. Oh, where did he get his blaster? Some guy gave it to him. Oh, Neat. You know, where'd he get his name? Didn't realize. I thought maybe it was his family name, but apparently not. Apparently it was, you know, someone had seen Game of Thrones and was like, oh, this whole idea of them naming bastards Snow or Sand, you know, that, you know, is based on the region. That's really great. Let's just call him Solo. It did a lot to ruin the character, but it wasn't as bad as The Last Jedi. And you know,
when you're following Rian Johnson, it's hard to destroy anything quite like that.
Yeah, it really is. So then when Rise of Skywalker came out, I was like, I have no interest in these sequel characters. I have no interest in seeing this. And my friend Allie like actually signed me into the Disney thing. She's like, no, she's like, I need to see it with you. I need to hear your opinion, you know, and see if it matches mine. And so we went and we saw it on the Disney lot. And same thing. She said like she could just feel like me just. I felt like I had a seizure at one point. It was such a rapid pace and so many like bright lights flashing at me. I feel like I just like I had a complete breakdown and didn't know what was going on anymore. And ultimately it didn't matter because nothing that happened in that movie mattered.
I don't know, when you sat down to talk about it, did you say this is what happened and this is what I think about it? We're not friends anymore.
No, because we had the same opinion. So it was like, you know, oh wow. And in her defense, she endured it a third time to see it with me. So that is, you know, that's dedication to anybody who wants to hear my opinion enough to sit through that movie a third time. I got to give some respect to.
Yeah, I feel bad for my wife. There's a lot of things that I really have an attachment to that I like, but they're just not really accessible here in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. You know, it's hard to get, you know, toys related to stuff that I think are cool, or even shirts or any type of like accessories, things that tie in and stuff I like. Star Wars is one of those things. Well, in comic books, you can get like MCU and maybe some of the DCU stuff. You can still get that, but Star Wars is like everywhere. You can get the toys, you can get memorabilia, you can get shirts and everything. So that was like kind of, if she needed to get me something for my birthday or something, like, let me go find something Star Wars related. I feel bad for it because it's like, you can just stop getting me the Star Wars stuff unless it's original trilogy and it's a character I really love. I don't need it anymore. Like I watched the OT with my kids, and I've told my wife they're not allowed to, unless it's BB-8. They're not wearing shirts of the new Star Wars stuff. It's off limits.
Yeah, and BB-8, you know, it's like, yeah, it's cute, but essentially, J.J. Abrams' big contribution to Star Wars at the end of the day is just sticking a droid head on a beach ball and thinking that was delightful, and then not using R2-D2, who, you know, the whole thread of the Star Wars films, the episodes, is the droids, and to just like leave R2-D2 out was just a terrible choice. And then in the third one, they give C-3PO this whole adventure, and I saw this great bit where it's apparently Anthony Daniels was always going to George Lucas and being like, you know, well, you know, this would be a great time for C-3PO to have a heroic moment, and George was always just shooting him down, going like, no, he's just always scared. You know, that's his character. He's just scared. He's the coward. He's, you know. And so I guess finally Anthony Daniels got in J.J. Abrams' ear and convinced him to give C-3PO a heroic moment. It's really dumb. And it does ultimately, like everything else in the movie, it has no consequence. It doesn't matter. It's undone very quickly. Yeah, it's just the movies don't matter. They don't matter. They don't, as far as I'm concerned, they don't exist. They're an apocryphal tale told over a campfire. You know, that's the nice thing about Star Wars. It happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And the stuff that you don't like, you can say to yourself, well, you know what? That's whoever's telling the story just got that legend wrong. For me, the expanded universe is still the future of Star Wars.
Yeah, it should be. There's so many cool characters there. They're sort of mining them, but changing them. But you know, it's weird. It's also ruined other stuff. I used to watch, I guess Collider's a lot different now than when I watched it. But I used to watch Collider every single day. And I always watch their movie news, like 30-minute show. I would watch the High Council, whatever, the Star Wars show that they had. I'd watch the John Schnepp comic book show. I watch kind of all their stuff in the trivia that they had. I would watch hours of Collider every single week. I enjoyed the show. I didn't like everybody, but for the most part, I liked the content. I remember when I got out of the movie, I was with my family here in the Philippines. I can't check anything out. So as soon as I got back to the States, my vacation was over. I went home and I went on the Collider because I can't really talk about Star Wars with my wife. She's not really that big of a fan. She doesn't understand everything that was wrong with it. I need to hear from other people. Like, what did they think about it? What did they find wrong? How much have we have in common? And I got into about, I don't know, maybe a minute and a half of the Collider, the Last Jedi spoiler review, and the entire panel. Harloff, was the Mark Ellis, Mark 2D2. I think maybe Dennis Sang was there. Definitely Campy was there. Every one of them was talking about how great it was. I turned it off, and I've never watched a second of any of their program ever again, because I was like, there's no way you could get 5 Star Wars fans anywhere near each other and come to any kind of consensus that that was a good movie. And at that moment, I knew that they were not trustful, and they were fucking lying.
Yeah, it's like they were, you know, they wanted to continue to have access, so they were going to.
They were at the premiere, on the red carpet and all that stuff, and they thought they were important. And I was like, nah, if that's who you want to be, that's who you want to be. But I no longer trust your opinion on anything, because I know that at least some of you are outright lying, because a vast majority of people, if you really love Star Wars, you go into that movie, you go out feeling dirty.
Yeah, you just I don't know any of my friends at the time that had been big Star Wars fans, you know, their whole lives, and who had watched all the movies, who came out of there saying, like, you know, this was the right decision. This was the right way for these characters to go. Largely, a huge segment of the fandom views this as apocrypha, as well they should, because it's not Star Wars. It's Kathleen Kennedy's self-insert. And I called that like a long time before that started kind of getting out there. As I said, Last Jedi made me realize that Kathleen Kennedy probably always hated working for George Lucas. You know, probably always had some kind of resentment, because the second film goes out of its way to have the character that seems to be her self-insert destroy the legacy of the character that's George's, in a sense. You know, I don't think that George saw himself necessarily as Luke Skywalker, but he drew from his, you know, from growing up in Modesto and, you know, little dirty farming community and you know, just the little Dust Bowl area that he lived. He drew on that for Luke's character. So for her to destroy that, I think showed a contempt for Lucas and for what he had built. And the idea to me that Disney paid $4 billion for this franchise and then just handed it to somebody who has done nothing but drag it down is mind-boggling to me. The fact that they went into a trilogy and didn't have a plan, that they just, you know, shot from the hip on each film. How do you pay $4 billion for something and not meticulously plan out how it's going to be successful, how you're going to get your money back? They just looked at it as a license to print money. They thought that they could just let Lucasfilm run kind of independently, the way that Pixar does and the way that the MCU does. But you didn't have a visionary in, you know, for all of John Lasseter's flaws, you know, you can't take away that he's a visionary for all of his personal flaws. You know, you can't take away the fact that Kevin Feige knew what he was doing when he, you know, took the MCU where he did. Kathleen Kennedy just doesn't measure up in that regard. She's not a creative person. Really,
retroactively, it destroys the entire movie, The Force Awakens. It
destroys the original trilogy. Rise of Skywalker just obliterates the entire meaning of the original trilogy.
No, I still love the original trilogy. You can't touch that.
No.
But I'm saying in rewatching The Force Awakens, which I tried to do once, knowing where this all goes, and you finally get the answers to the questions that are being set up, it's unwatchable. And I just hated the movie almost as much as the Rise of or The Last Jedi. Mm-hmm. In the end, I was like, basically what happens in this movie has retroactively made the other movie just as awful.
Yes.
And made me look like an idiot with my friend James, for having any type of hope that they were going to have some real resolutions to these questions that they've resolved, and there was some real world building going on. I didn't realize that, you know, because you hear those stories where Kathleen Kennedy was like, you know, Rian Johnson's the director I always wanted to work with. She fired so many people on so many projects at that point. They're like, this is the guy that really has the vision. And I wasn't even thinking about it at the time, but you look back at it. What did she do? She neuters Hux. She makes Poe Dameron into basically a joke character. She makes Finn the laughing stock, you know, of the Star Wars universe. He's the next Jar Jar Binks at that point. Mm-hmm. She makes Luke ineffectual. He loses a stick fight to an untrained, combatant in seconds. He dies an unheroic death. He just dies. Okay. He didn't even do anything. And she basically just, what Rian Johnson did.
Force Skyping for so long, it's a video game mechanic, Wes. He drained his force meter, and then his health meter started to drain.
But looking back, you can see why she was so excited, because he essentially went through and destroyed all the male characters, whether they were heroes or not.
Yeah, and then you find out things like Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland was supposed to be Mos Eisley, the Star Wars that everybody knew. But she stepped in and was like, no, it should be based on the new movies and the new things that we're doing. Even though this place that we're going to create, the Batu, does not appear anywhere in any of the films, not even in her films. And that could have worked. It could have worked just being an outpost, but you still needed those things that are recognizable to the majority of people. And the thing, why would you ever bank
Who wants to picture in Batu that's never been seen anywhere?
Yeah. And why would you bank on films that are still coming out instead of films that people have loved for 40 years? You've already got that. It's mind-boggling to me that the decisions that were made and the amount of control that she was given. I think there's a quote out there from Spielberg even saying that like she's basically like a secretary that failed upwards or something to that effect. Don't quote me directly on that. I'm paraphrasing it wildly, but I remember reading that somewhere.
What's crazy, Aaron, is essentially Star Wars should have been a license to print money, not only in movies or streaming and television. Really, where the money to be made was in toys and merchandising. Mm-hmm. And they've just crapped the bed. They've crapped the bed. In the Philippines, where I am, you can still get all the characters from the first movie. Mm-hmm. They're marked down. They're like it's 75% off now, and people still don't want them.
No, you can. I think it was Entertainment Earth that did for Valentine's Day. You could buy a bouquet of roses. So for $12 or $24, you could get 12 or 24 rose figures. Just as a joke. And that's basically what the sequel trilogy became. It became a joke. It's a joke about how terrible it is, about how unsellable this merchandise is. I'm sure it's not a joke to Hasbro. They lost tons of money. Toys R Us, it's one of the reasons that they finally went under, is that they just invested so heavily in Star Wars thinking it was going to save them, and it didn't. The only thing I think that came out of Kathleen Kennedy's camp that I liked was Rogue One, because it was just essentially a war film. And I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. It actually, I was actually excited after that film. I liked that movie way more than I liked The Force Awakens. We hadn't been hit with Last Jedi yet, obviously. But I was like, the Rogue One was so much better. I like this, these little like one-offs. Maybe these will be really good. But then once Last Jedi came out, I lost interest. And I mean, you're talking to a guy who has the Millennium Falcon that used to hang in Toys R Us, that giant Millennium Falcon that when the original trilogy was re-released in theaters, I got that Falcon from the local Toys R Us. I was in there negotiating constantly with the manager until finally he was like, "Look, I'm tired of you coming in and asking me about this. Just I'll give it to you when it's done." And so I've got that. I've got storage containers upon storage containers of Star Wars 3 3/4 figures. I buy the Black Series stuff as long as it's not sequel related. Huge Star Wars fan, statues. I've spent so much money on this throughout my life. Devoted, and that's the thing. That's the betrayal. And they say like, oh, you toxic fanboys and everything that they accuse you of being. And it's like, no, customers, people who have spent thousands upon thousands of dollars on the merchandise from these films, and that made George Lucas a very, very rich man. And you could have walked right into all that and just had that money flowing in, but instead you gave us unsellable product, and product kids don't want to play with. Kids don't want to play with the Rose Tico action figure. Nothing against Kelly Marie Tran. When I first saw her talking about being in Star Wars, I was very excited for her. I was like, oh, she's cute. She's so enthusiastic about being in the movie. Like it's adorable. Her enthusiasm is infectious. And they did her no favors in that movie. They put her in a boring, frumpy jumpsuit. She didn't have a jetpack or anything cool. Nothing toyetic about her. And they approached these movies without keeping that in mind. That what are the toys going to be? What are the what's going to fire these kids' imaginations and make them want to play with these action figures?
And you work in the toy industry. You are a reseller or is a retailer. You sell a lot of action figures, a lot of collectibles, correct?
I'm a toy hustler.
You're a toy hustler. Yeah, I know. On the weekends, you go to big markets and you sell your wares. Are people coming up and asking for any of this stuff?
The
Can you
sequel
even
stuff
move it?
is the sequel stuff is unsellable. When the Force Awakens, or not the Force Awakens, when Rise of Skywalker came out, Hasbro released cases, and they did very little. They did just kind of what was required, I think, of them by Disney in their release of sequel characters. And the Rey figure is, these are $20 retail figures. As soon as the cases came in, we marked Rey down to $10, which is about $6 under cost. But it was just get these out of here. And then there was maybe one or two good characters in the case that were original trilogy characters that we marked up to cover the loss on
For the costs of Rey.
Yeah. And those figures are all gone. The more expensive ones are all gone. The Reys we still have.
It's crazy. Yeah. I've seen it in Cebu, which is the second kind of biggest city here. I've seen it in Manila. And we haven't got to travel a lot lately. But even in the little mall we have here that does have some Star Wars stuff, anything to do with those original, the new characters in the sequel, they're all gone. Or I'm sorry, they're all still there, but the original trilogy stuff is gone.
Mm-hmm.
They can't keep it in stock. People still want Luke Skywalker. People still want Han Solo. They want Darth Vader stuff.
Jedi Luke is still the best-selling action figure out of any assortment that he gets put into. The last time they did him, when they did him in the Black Series, they did him as a Walmart exclusive, which was a terrible idea. It's that is your most popular character, and especially after his appearance on the final episode of Mandalorian season 2, we had people sending emails and calling and it's do you have any Jedi Luke? Do you have any Jedi Luke? It really reignited people's passion for Star Wars, only to have Kathleen Kennedy come and shoot hobble it by firing Gina Carano and stirring a bunch more controversy around the one successful thing that they had.
It's crazy. So does The Mandalorian give you hope?
The Mandalorian, I think there is a lot of reason to be hopeful for Star Wars. Most of it is rumor that's coming out. But it seems to be rumor that has some basis in fact, and I hope that it's true. It seems to be that Kathleen Kennedy is on her way out. Her contract's not going to be renewed. They may have already kind of shuffled her off into just a non-power position, and she's just going to play out the rest of her contract, but without any actual power, which I hope is the case, because I don't know if you heard, but for about 2 weeks, the Star Wars social media presence went completely silent. And now it's come back on. It's a much more corporate kind of promotional feed. And they just released something for, the anniversary. And it was an image of, the original trilogy characters, the Mandalorian characters, Ahsoka, some Clone Wars, a little bit of prequels, the actual things that...
You're talking about the May the 4th be with you montage that had
no sequel characters whatsoever. No Rey, no Kylo Ren, no Poe, no Finn, nothing. But they're used to minimizing Finn on posters, in China, because it's so progressive, But
I have hope with stuff that Jon Favreau is associated with, and Dave Filoni to a lesser degree, but to a degree. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I think the most ideal situation. I don't think Filoni wants to be the king. I think that he is just happy where he's at, just producing things. I think everybody's hope right now is that Kathleen Kennedy is replaced with Jon Favreau. Hopefully he wants that job and they give it to him. And then he and Dave Filoni can just make good Star Wars. And, the one thing that they do is they bring George Lucas in and they consult with him. And they get his take on everything. And they try to do something that's very true to his vision. If I was running LucasFilm, the first thing that I would do is I would declare the sequel trilogy Legends. I would restore the expanded universe. And I would redefine the canon and start producing animated films with Luke, Leia, Han. I would do the Heir to the Empire trilogy. I would do those things as the official sequels. I would start playing with all of the amazing toys that they had. You could have done Force Awakens. You could have done the Star Wars sequels and kept the expanded universe intact. All you had to do was use Jaina Solo. You still could have introduced a new character. You could have introduced Rey and started a mystery.
You notice what they did, though? They took all the most important stories and basically they rewrote them as novels and in comic books and then re-released them. So you had to go buy them again with the new.
Yeah. Yeah, but you could have achieved the same goal and still had all of this great lore to draw from, because you could have the only thing that you would kind of have to undo for audiences is the death of Chewbacca, which is easy because most people that are going to go to see a Star Wars film have not read, the novels. They haven't read the Yuzan Vong books. They don't know that Chewbacca's dead. So you just have Chewbacca in the movie. You've got Jaina Solo. You can have
with the robotic arm, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Does he have a robotic arm? I can't remember.
I think it was the end before he died. He actually had like one arm was missing, like half of it.
You might be right. I might. It's been a while since I read the novel, so I may have forgotten that. But you just have Chewbacca there, and then you explain him coming back in a novel just to keep all the continuity for all the nerds. Keep it straight. But
he didn't actually die
that in the film.
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I could get excited, but I'm with you. There's no movie that they could make at this point. If like George Lucas's name is going to have to be as like, I don't know if he needs to be the EP, but he needs to be associated with it.
Yeah, and I think if we get Favreau and Filoni in charge, I think that definitely happens. I think that cutting him out was a huge mistake. I don't think that the prequels worked necessarily as well as they should have because, the original trilogy, George had checks and balances. And I think as a writer or a creator, it's always good to have people to tell you when you creatively, for lack of a better term, when you start to get up your own ass, you're so close to it that you're not seeing the flaws. So you need somebody like a Lawrence Kasdan to come in, rewrite your dialogue and kind of polish it, so that you get a much better product. And I think the problem was that the sequels were so rushed as far as production goes. He had a finished script 2 weeks before they started shooting. There's that.
Well, and you can tell what J.J. Abrams was building to and what Rian Johnson continued with couldn't have been more diametrically opposed.
No, Rian Johnson came in and just basically just threw everything out and left the trilogy in a place where it had nowhere to go. Your characters are in the exact same spot as they were at the end of Force Awakens, but worse. And you've taken away all of the mystery, all of the things that were being set up, so that it's like
all the answers were so bad.
Yeah, so Rise of Skywalker is mostly trying to kind of like retcon some of The Last Jedi while trying to reestablish some of those mysteries, and it just none of it comes off as satisfying because you're like, this is just the most disjointed mess I've ever seen. I think in years from now, that trilogy will be a case study in film school of what not to do when setting up a story. Yeah, just don't do that. Just look at this and don't do this. And the takeaway should just be don't hire Rian Johnson to be your.
Well, I think it's probably Kathleen Kennedy. She's probably egging him on. That's perfect. Yeah. But I don't know.
He was supposed to get a trilogy. She was like, I'm giving him a trilogy. And we haven't heard anything of that in a long, long time.
I haven't watched The Rise of Skywalker. If you get to this point in the video, you obviously like the channel, you like the discussion. If you want, I will watch The Rise of Skywalker, and Aaron and I can talk about it.
If you like,
I don't know if he's going to put himself through it a second time.
But obviously, you don't like us because you're going to make us watch The Rise of Skywalker.
But I will do it if there's enough people that would like us to actually go back and talk about that. It's something I'm not really interested in, but I would do it, I guess, if people wanted me to. But I don't know. It sucks being in this place. The Mandalorian stuff's fine. I still like, if I can get original trilogy shirts or toys for my kids, we still have a lot of fun with it. I still enjoy those movies with the boys, but
I'm hopeful for the Bad Batch. I liked the opening of it. There's a lot of people complaining about the character Omega that was introduced and saying like, oh, it's another Mary Sue. But what I'm saying is, much like I thought was going to happen with Rey, let the story kind of play out.
My buddy James would be like, "That's what you really think?"
I understand why people feel burned. I understand why people feel gun shy at the character of Omega. I really do. But I'm an optimistic person. I try to be. So
you've taken the Luke role.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that it'll play out and it'll have a satisfying reason for these things. It's only
you're looking at the twin suns with a little bit of hope, with a sparkle in your eye of better days ahead.
Absolutely. But what? The Bad Batch. Pull in the lore from the books, man. Pull in Cal Skirata. Pull in Wayland Val, the Mandalorian trainers on Camino that trained the clone troopers and trained the commandos. Let's see Delta Squad. Bring all that stuff in. That Republic Commando game remains one of my favorite games of all time. So let's start playing with the good stuff.
Yeah, I can't wait to actually watch a new Star Wars movie with my two boys. Well, it'll be three boys by then. Third one will be here in less than a month now. And just enjoy it together and know that I'm getting something that was created for Star Wars fans and we can enjoy together. And I can have the same moment that Alberto did before Rian Johnson destroyed everything. Now, Aaron, I know you have a story. We'll get off on this story. I know you have a story about Jango Fett.
Oh, okay, yeah. So years ago at Comic-Con, it was after, obviously after Attack of the Clones, and I loved the character of Jango Fett. I thought Tamora Morrison was really cool. I loved his performance in that movie, just very cold and kind of, old West gunslinger, which I think Star Wars is at its best when you've really got like that Western element in it. And so I go up to his table and I'm talking to him, and I said, I really loved your portrayal of the character. I said, I actually got like a little bit I got some goosebumps when your little exchange with Obi-Wan, how your little back and forth. I said, but then at the end, when he's leaving, you just kind of deliver this flat line of "always a pleasure to meet a Jedi." And I said, in the way you said it, I was like, oh, this guy's killed Jedi. Like I was like, there's some history here. And I was like, and I knew that we would probably get that in like novels and comic books and things like that. And I was like, I couldn't wait. And I was like, but I just absolutely loved that delivery. And he was very grateful. And we talked for a few more minutes, and then I excused myself so he could get to the rest of his line. And I said, well, it's really nice meeting you. And he reaches out and he takes my hand like both hands. And he just he looks me in the eyes like just that steely glare, and he goes, "Always a pleasure." And I was like, oh, ooh. I got that like total geek out moment. And then it turned out he was staying at like our hotel. He was in the embassy suites where we were. And so we ran into him downstairs and we're chatting with him and had a good time. He took a bunch of pictures with us and just a great guy. I love that guy. So it's so good to see him back as Boba Fett. It's nice to see him getting work. I love in The Mandalorian when she says, I've heard your voice thousands of times. And he goes, mine might be the last one you hear. And I was like, I love it.
Hopefully there's more geek out moments in the future for Star Wars fans, but there's some healing needs to be done. Aaron, thank you so much for talking, just about how Star Wars has changed over the last few years. And I'm glad you still have some hope.
Yeah. If people like it, maybe we can talk about other movies too. We can come on and do movie reviews or something.
Absolutely. I have no problems going back and talking about Goonies or something great like that.
We got to get Silvani on and do Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze.
All right, I'm down. We can get Mark Pellegrini in here too. He loves turtles.
I would assume both of them have some strong opinions.